I want to jump to this story. We have this tweet from ALX. Breaking. The Biden administration has officially filed a notice of appeal in the Missouri v. Biden censorship case after a federal judge issued a preliminary injunction order barring government officials from contacting social media companies to suppress lawful speech. Simply put, this is the Biden administration's notice of appeal seeking to effectively overturn the right of freedom of speech in this country, the First Amendment.
Yes.
Why? The judge said you are still allowed to contact all of these companies for issues of national security and just not for suppressing the speech of U.S. citizens. The appeal specifically means the Biden administration wants the right to suppress the speech of American citizens. This is where we're currently at. The New York Times takes the amazing approach that it's bad. We should allow the government to stop people from speaking their minds. That's where we're currently at in this country. So you want to talk about a twisted reality?
Ian.
We have people who, here's where Democrats are. They quite literally don't care if people are bringing into schools books depicting adult carnal activities and this information to kids. They literally don't care that a teacher was trying to give students instruction, or literally did give students instruction on how to use Grindr, which is an 18 and up app only. They literally do not care of these things. They don't care that kids are getting access to psychotic and obscene graphic pornography. I'm not just talking about, as I mentioned earlier, like two people in a bedroom. The stuff you can find online is insane. They don't care about any of that. What they don't want you to do is criticize Joe Biden. What they don't want you to do is point out the Hunter Biden laptop story. What they don't want you to do is point out that they actually want to censor conservatives. Because if you do those things, they try to remove you. What they don't want you to do is advocate that children's not get sex change surgery. They'll ban you for that too. But they don't care about all the depravity. When I look at this stuff with what Joe Biden is doing, it really does feel like we are looking at an evil mirror image of what this country and what our society has believed in. It's the antithesis of everything we thought was good and moral and just. We want people to speak their minds. We don't want kids exposed to graphic images. What are the Democrats advocating for? The complete inversion, the suppression of individual rights and speech, and they advocate children see these things. And that's just the beginning. We can go on to all the 7 deadly sins too. This is shockingly insane.
Well, this has been going on for a long time. This is the most transparently it's been, I guess, reflected in government. But even if we look at Twitter before Elon Musk, the amount of resources they were dedicating to controlling the narrative on the vaccine or election interference versus the amount of resources they were dedicated to actually, shutting down, child exploitation material, it absolutely shows where their priorities are. They don't actually care about people's well-being. It's all about controlling the narrative. So, children being exposed to any type of graphic thing, being exploited online, that doesn't really harm their control, so they don't really do anything about it. But hey, someone questioning the efficacy of the vax, that actually does threaten their control. So they go all in on devoting resources, manpower, finances, whatever, into controlling that.
When you think of the government, do you think of it as a very powerful thing, or do you see it more as kind of like a visage of power?
I think it's a very, very powerful thing. And I think Americans they're naive as to how all-encompassing the government really is in their day-to-day lives, infringing on their freedoms. I mean, because yes, America is a very free country, especially compared to somewhere like even, Canada or the UK. But to act as if the country now resembles anything the founding fathers had in mind, no, they're rolling in their graves right now.
I agree that we need some form of censorship, and kind of tail backing off what you were saying, Tim, about how kids are seeing like graphic images. Like we need to protect some aspect of our culture, of our life, of our species, and that is through just censorship. But
I just want to ask you one question real quick. Do you conceive of preventing children from seeing pornography as censorship?
I suppose it depends on how it's done. That could be one way to prevent them from seeing it. To say, like, you can't be here.
It is censorship.
Well, I mean,
another way, like, hey, let's go
thing.
out and play tonight instead of being on the computer. That's not really censorship.
The way that this is only my perception. When I think of censorship, I think of something that is trying, or at least the effort is made to prevent anyone from seeing it. So like kids being prevented from seeing adult content, to me that doesn't come across as censorship, because you prevent kids from grabbing the red hot stove, because it's protecting them.
But censorship doesn't need to be always negative or always positive. It's just restricting information.
I think ratings on movies are a form of censorship. To let you know ahead of time, don't take your kid to see the R-rated one.
Well, I mean, like, courts in the U.S. have ruled that pornography is not free speech. So I guess I would push back on the idea that restricting pornography is censorship, because if it doesn't technically infringe on your free speech, because pornography isn't speech, according to the courts, is that actually censorship?
I think
censorship is the suppression or prohibition of any parts of books, films, news, etc., that are considered obscene, politically unacceptable, or a threat to security.
That's like a half definition. You can censor and let things happen. Like, I can be like, well, I looked at the video. I'm the guy that owns the website, and I'm going to let the video on. I still censored it. I just didn't take it down. I censored it and allowed it to be there.
Right. So here's ultimately the issue. Censorship, based on that definition, the other simple definition was restricting access to images, information, books, film, etc., that are offensive. We find it offensive to show kids this lewd and lascivious stuff. We would like that to be censored. The left, Democrats, etc., and liberals want kids to see these things, which I think is psychotic and evil. So they say, we oppose censorship. However, your naughty words, where you say something like, I disagree with you, and the way you are living your life, I think, is bad for everyone. They say that is shocking and offensive and shouldn't be allowed. Let me just put it this way. These people live in this world. For you and I, for the people who watch this show, it would seem to be insanity. Of course, we are offended at the thought that children are getting access to lewd and lascivious behavior. Of course, we are shocked that people try to restrict our ability to have a political debate. In the left world, they are absolutely shocked we would try and stop children from seeing these things. How insane is that?
It is insane. I've had friends be like, "What? Why do you want censorship? Censorship's bad. No censorship." And it's like, yeah, snap out of it. Yeah, you want to censor the bad stuff, of course. But then who's deciding what's bad? Is it what he said? Is it what she said? Someone, what they said about my kid? Like, so who's censoring
That's the reality.
it? Yeah, who's the censor? Should we make it an algorithm, like an open source artificial intelligence that's giving advice to people?
This is why it's a culture war, because there are two distinct moral frameworks. There is the traditional American, I would say simply put, Judeo-Christian moral framework. And then there is the leftist, there is no truth but power moral framework. It seems to be, look, it is really simple in some ways. Say a thing and a leftist will say the exact opposite for the only reason of opposing you. Hence, their positions change rapidly and seem to make no sense. That's just the reality of it.
Well, there was one of the Krasenstein brothers, after that viral clip of nudity, like exposed male genitalia, I think it was Seattle Pride. One of them was actually somewhat defending it. And it's like I can think of no other reason why a sane person would be defending a male exposing himself to minors if it were not a leftist just contradicting the right.
And the Krasensteins, for those that are familiar, they're prominent liberal personalities, have tried taking this more moderate centrist approach. And so their approach to this was, hey, it's probably not that big of a deal if a kid sees nudity. It happens a lot. I don't think someone should be riding around nude in front of a bunch of kids. That's not a good thing. But libs of TikTok sharing it is worse than the guy doing it. So it was still this critique of libs of TikTok that did, to a certain degree, downplay the nudity in front of kids. I don't think it's completely wrong for the Krasensteins to say that, because kids go in locker rooms all the time with people who are naked around them. However, at an event that is explicitly sexual in nature with the intent of expressing sexual ideas, then you're crossing the line into grooming territory. But my point with the Krasensteins here, to add on to what you're saying, is they're just saying something critical of the right for the sake of being critical of the right. This is the crazy thing. How hard would it be for any liberal to say something like, I want universal health care? And then I go, okay, I have no opinion on that. What do you think about these books? Yeah, those books shouldn't be for kids. How hard is that? They can't do it. They come on the Culture War podcast, or they come on this show and they say something like, I think it's good. And I'm like, really, why? You end up with that famous clip. We had with Lance from the Surfs saying that women should be allowed to get an abortion whenever they want. but that pregnant women shouldn't be allowed to do meth because it kills the baby.
Right.
Like, huh?
That was awesome.
Because there's no moral framework.
I think there are a lot of people that would be considered on the left or liberal, culturally liberal, that would be open to talking exactly what you're saying, Tim. Like, yeah, okay, universal healthcare, great. This book probably shouldn't be for kids, great. But it's the loudmouth contrarians that are famous
And the
right now.
tribalists.
And it's so annoying. This tribalism is like, it's like binding. It's like holding people back. It's like sticky goo on their feet that they can't, you can get out of it, but you got to realize you're
That's
in
the
it.
left.
It's like all people too. It's everywhere I look, man, in this political crap is like the willingness to say no. Like, not always. Sometimes yes and yes. You can both be right, you know? Sorry, Phil, were you about to say something? You look like you were about to say something.
No, just Tim said that, Tim was saying that, talking about Lance, and I think that you gave Lance too much credit, but...
What do you mean?
Because
there's no moral framework?
Yeah, you said that he has no moral framework, and that's true, but I don't think that the reason that, Lance said that dumb thing was because of a lack of moral framework. I think it was just because Lance was tired after using all of his brain power to keep up for the conversation. That was just Lance not knowing that he was going to be walked into a...
Well, this
Lance
is the
round
thing.
2 is about to happen.
I've talked to a lot of people about the idea of debates. It's the weirdest concept to me. Like people have asked me, like, I'm going to be debating this issue, and what do you think about this argument? I'm like, do you believe what you are saying? Like, then what are you asking me for? If someone came here and said, did you know X, Y, or Z? I'd be like, I didn't. I'll look into it. Here's what I believe. Like, it's this idea that we're debating people just to appear like we know what we're talking about makes no sense to me. So I will have a conversation with quite literally anybody, and there is no winning or losing a debate.
I think it's
just
the
not
difference
reality.
between debate and dialectic. Like, are we talking to prove the other wrong, or are we talking because we are both interested in pursuing the truth, and we maybe have different versions of what it is, and we're trying to kind of spar back and forth to see how we can best get there. Those are two very different, I guess, approaches to have. And that's, I'm not that interested in like strictly debate, because there are formal debates like point, counterpoint, point, counterpoint. I don't think that's productive. But when you actually have people who are having a conversation and they could have opposing views, but they're trying to understand each other and arrive at the truth, that I think is actually something interesting.
So this is what happens. Lance from the Surfs comes on the show with the intent of winning a debate. We have him on the show with the intent of him explaining how he sees the world.
Yeah.
The problem is he doesn't actually know how he sees the world. He just knows how to regurgitate talking points for the sake of debate. Hence, when it comes to the question of abortion, I can ask him 50 million questions on what his logic is, and he can't answer it because he doesn't have any.
He just has arguments to what you might say.
He has pre-scripted arguments.
Yep.
He had it written down. I don't write anything down. People are like, Tim, you did a really great job on Rogan with Dorsey. And I'm like, I prepared in no way. I researched nothing. I shut up and talked about what I thought.
You were talking about him coming and not being prepared, and about how his opinion changes and stuff. The left doesn't have a foundational opinion on stuff because of the fact that it's power games.
There's no moral framework.
Yeah.
For example, when that woman came on the Culture War, I'm not going to say her name.
Yeah.
And because I'm kind of tired of it, but she said the show appeals to neo-Nazis, and then 10 minutes later or half an hour later told actual justice warrior that he was too right-wing for this show because the show was moderate.
Yeah.
Quite literally saying random words for the sake of saying random words.
Well, no, they're not random. They're all designed to undermine. So, I mean, it's in its own way a consistent moral framework if it's counter to the right and in its pursuit of like their own power. I mean, James Lindsay talks about that a lot. It's not a double standard. It's one consistent standard. Yeah. If it helps me, it's helped my cause. If it's for the pursuit of power, then it is good.
This is why Lance's abortion thing broke down in the way it did. Because he doesn't have a real position on abortion. Yeah. He has talking point. And so I, with an actual position on limits of government, individual rights, constitutional rights, when does life begin, and have all these views where I've had many discussions about it, trying to understand it. You can ask me 1,000,001 questions and I will give you an answer, or outright just be like, you know what, I'm not so sure about that. I just don't know.
And I bet you're willing to change your opinion if you find out something that might go contrary to your existing
Easily.
moral
I
framework.
can guarantee that Tim is willing to change his opinion, although I've noticed it doesn't always happen right away. Sometimes we'll argue and I'll say something where I'm like, damn, I was good. I was true. And then like, it'll be like 3 days later, you'll be like, yeah, you'll see what I was talking about. It doesn't always happen right away.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. Hang out with us live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. and become a member over at timcast.com for uncensored, members-only shows exclusive. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.